Lovely. So make yourself comfortable in a chair. Right, feet down. Maybe a little bit forward on the chair just to start off with. You don't have to stay like that. Your back may start to ache or something like that. Rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Just noticing the sensations of the tapping on your face and wherever else as we work through the length of our body, over your head and down to your neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. One side. Upper part of the chest. Right on your belly. And then a little bit stronger on your legs. Good. Now, just sit back, let your weight drop back into the chair. Just take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. Just using the whole range of aspects of Tai Chi. The feeling your weight dropping, the changes in your body as it does, your breathing, positioning of your feet and your hands, as ways of anchoring your attention at the start of the session. It's possible to regard the whole session as a meditation session, a moving meditation session. This is a key element in Tai Chi and relates Tai Chi to other meditative arts like mindfulness, related practices that are sort of currently quite in vogue in healthcare circles. And with Tai Chi, what we have to focus on is directly into our bodies. What we come back to is an awareness of our posture, our breathing, our movement in relation to the exercise that we're doing. Trying to follow those on a moment-to-moment basis. My first teacher, Bronwyn Hipkin, this was learning a Tai Chi form, was constantly saying that the seed of the next movement is in the movement that you're doing. So however well you think you do or don't know what's about to come, the best chance of getting it correct is to be correct here. And that's really just a way of encouraging us to be in this moment rather than thinking ahead or thinking behind. You will make mistakes, you will miss things. And it's tempting to sort of like try and rewind, but you can't. You can only follow through when you're actually part of the session. The session's being recorded, so if there's something that comes up and you're not quite sure, you can always check it out, or you could send me an email and ask. But in the actual process of it, we can just go from moment to moment, registering what is actually happening. That's quite a challenging proposition, because most of us will experience a distraction on a regular basis, a noise from outside, a thought, an idea. We'll all tend to sort of like, you'll start thinking, oh, well, what if I do it? And suddenly we're out of this sense of being very much in the moment. But the thing that we learn to do is to not resist that, but to rather steer ourselves back. One very useful image that I came across some years ago in sitting meditation was the teacher describing it as or likening it to sitting beside a river. When you sit on the riverbank, you watch the river and the river flows past, and you're not trying to stop the river, So you're not trying to stop your thoughts. You're not trying to divert it or turn it into something else. You're just observing the river. But you're sitting on the bank, but every now and then you fall into the river. So you might think, oh, I'm a bit hungry. And then sort of like 30 seconds later or a minute later, you're planning the shopping trip that you're going to make on Friday so you can cook a meal on Saturday. One thought leads to another. When we realize that's happened, then we simply come back to the riverbank. So the exercises and the sequence that we do them in kind of represent the riverbank in a way. And they're also the things that can make us notice that we've lost that focus of attention, which I think, oh, what am I doing? Is this it? Where am I in this exercise? And so on. Now, coming to the upright position, noting any sort of like changes that you feel in your body, how your hips are responding to the extra weight. Are you able to get that sense ticking the front of your upper body, rib cage dropping, and so on, but still with a good muscle tone there, an elastic tone, so that as you breathe in, you can feel muscles in your upper body, belly, solar plexus and chest just expanding like a balloon expanding when somebody blows into it, and then the contraction following the same pattern as you breathe out, giving a steady flow and a steady rhythm between those two movements: in, breath out, breath in, breath out, breath, expansion, contraction, however you care to label it. Remembering that the labels are only good up to a certain point. You don't want to get stuck on ideas, images, labels as being the thing that we're trying to do. They're all ways of pointing us at the experience, pointing us at different aspects of the experience. And then just gently turning your head, noticing which parts of your body engage in the actual movement. Are those areas extending or contracting? Is there any tightening that you can identify? Can you notice the point where an extension naturally changes to a contraction? Make sure that you're not making that an artificial thing, not going too far, certainly. And we know when we're going too far because there's a sense of the body gripping, tightening around something. But also making sure you go far enough into the fullness of the movement to get the maximum benefit from the contraction, drawing you in the other direction. And aware of that little bit of a quietening, a pausing, where extension changes to contraction, contraction changes to extension. Hands in front of your shoulders, elbows going back. And another paired description could be full and empty. So when we bring our elbows back, it feels like the chest is filling up a little bit. And then when they go forward, it seems to empty in. The opposite way round in our upper back. Maybe if there's some sense of that elsewhere in your body as well. So here, as your elbows go up, there's a lengthening and extension in the side of your body, followed by a contraction. And then going forwards. So as we learn, as we practice paying attention, we notice more and more details. And as we notice more details, so we use those details to build our ability to focus. So they too relate to each other. Mind and awareness on the one hand, and movement and the subtleties of movement on the other hand. Hands down to your sides, winding around. And then circling. Back the other way. And then tilting forwards, feeling your weight transferring to being dominant in your feet, and then using your legs to push you back. And again, noticing how this happens. And in particular, begin with focusing on this feeling of compression in your legs. Going back to the idea of the balloon. If you could imagine having a big balloon in front of you, say, or a big ball, like one of these big blue balls you get in gyms, and you went forwards and you leant into it, and you would feel the pressure building up, and then eventually it would expand and push you back. As long as you're not getting into a fight with it, you don't go forwards and think, right, it's stopping me, I'm going to push harder. You reach a point of fullness, and it just takes over and pushes you back. Similarly, as we go back into our hips, lower back and buttocks experience the same compression, and then pushes you. And sometimes it feels as though the ground or the chair beneath you is actually part of that. There's a compression there and it can push you back. It's quite interesting doing this on something like a lawn, a sort of mossy lawn or something like that, because that gives a little bit as well, particularly the standing one. Not so obvious in the chair, I think. And turn a little. So now feel the dominant part of the weight going into the leg that you're moving towards, able to distinguish between full and empty. Remembering that that awareness will really help you with the weight transfer, and the weight transfer done correctly will help you with your mobility, your stability. So there's a practical benefit that we can feel almost immediately with this focus of attention. Then we're going to change, so it's the opposite leg becomes full. Maybe your attention will point out your areas where you're stiffening up. You know, go forwards, maybe your calf tightens up, or your knee, or something like that. And just see if you can bring about a change there. Can you relax in that area? Because again, when we come to standing, that's more difficult, but still a useful skill to be able to develop. Comes out of this integration of mind and body, and then going around. And then back the other way. Good. And then come back. Your weight more back in your hips. Extending one leg. When you put the foot down, don't bring it straight back. Put the heel down, lower the toes, and just see if you can gently press in as though you're pushing your foot into soft sand, and then come back. So again, there's just that moment of pausing. It's easy to sort of just get into a kind of like rapid movement. So again, noticing these details aids that sense of quietening, of slowing down. On the other side. And it's also a good way of making sure that you've stepped in such a way, at such a distance and so on, that you can make contact with the ground, not just rest on the ground, but actually sort of feel as though you're in the ground. And again, that's a habit that becomes useful in just general movement around. And then bring the feet back parallel. So all of those things are things that we may continue to notice in one way or another as we go through the form. Now, the exercise, we don't do a form in this class. Turn your hands palm forwards. Once again, your weight going down in to your feet and then back. If you found that you could make that little bit of a push into the ground with your feet, see if you can just get it to happen slightly before your weight goes forwards. You might want to try it just with one foot. That will probably make you feel a bit lopsided for a while, but it's just a way of playing with this so that rather than just taking the chance that it's okay, you're clear that there's somewhere for the weight to go. And then if you can do that with your feet, maybe just try doing it with your hips as well when you're in the when your weight is forwards. So in those moments when you're settling down into your feet, you're also beginning to be able to just gently press your hips backwards, vice versa. And then fisherman cast a net. This time, bringing your hands over, so you're rolling the ball in towards you. Just rest it back in your hips until your arms will drop down again. Once again, rolling over. Feeling that slight sense of pulling on your fingers and wrists as your shoulders go back. Almost like your fingers are stuck in mud. You've used that springiness in your legs, move your shoulders back, but just for a moment, your fingers are reluctant to move. One more time, going forwards, coming up. As you reach this position here, turn your hands palm in, going into pigeon spreads its wings. Expanding in the front of your body, contracting in your upper back, compressing perhaps in your upper back. So here, again, like you're squeezing a balloon in between your shoulder blades, and eventually it just pushes you back, or pushes you forwards, I should say, pushes you back the other way. And then here, again, it's like you've got the balloon there, and that pressure flows into your back, moving you back, and then the pressure in the back flows into the front, moving you forward. Like you've got a long balloon, and you're sort of, you've got a little bit of air, and you squeeze the air to one end, and then you squeeze, and the air goes to the other, and you squeeze, and the air goes to the other, and so on. So that awareness of internal dynamic, that trained awareness, points us at aspects of the movement that are really quite subtle, but always going on. But as with everything, as we bring them into it's almost like the light of awareness. It's almost like shining a torch around a darkened room. You get to know the layout. You can make more use of whatever the torch is shining on at that point. Yeah, pushing away. One more time. And then hands loosely fisted. So there's some quite complex lines of movement, going back to the image of the riverbank, and watching the river. It's like, you know, there are little whirls and eddies and currents produced by obstructions and by different sort of wind patterns and so on and so forth. And we still have that filling and emptying from front to back, but we also have the rotation here in the arms. This time, opening your fingers, turning your hands out, winding them back, bringing them in, and pressing forwards. This time, turn your hands palm down, polishing the table. Feeling the movement in your lower back and hips, building up through your back and your spine to your shoulders, out through your arms, or your elbows, your wrists, your fingers. And then again, as your hips go back, your hands get drawn in. One more to each side. Okay, turn your hands palm up, pushing up with a gentle press down through feet and hips, lengthening in your back and your spine, followed by reversing of that contraction. Change into the wild goose. And then part in the clouds. No, just push up, observe how your fingertips just go around in a nice complete circle, not rushing that. Making sure that nothing's sort of getting in its way, as it were, and tightening and you're stiffening, or indeed any kind of thought about, I'm going to make it do this, or whatever. Just keep the posture correct, elbows soft, feel the movement expanding and contracting. One more time, and then going back to the first of these three exercises, rooting down and bring them together in a little sequence. They're here. We don't want to go dashing into the next movement. It's just that moment again of pausing while our body gets into position. One more round of this. So this time you come back, just let your hands drop straight down from your shoulders, feeling their weight, pulling on your shoulders slightly, and dragon plucks the stars from the sky, expanding through one side of your body and then contracting. So there's a push from feet and hips, then a movement upwards that moves your arm, and in that movement we get that expand, that lengthening here. One more on each side. And then bringing your hands around in front, once again, pressing up, this time a little bit above your head. Excuse me. And down, taking time to come all the way back down, and then preparing yourself to push out. Your whole upper body now expanding out from the center of your body, between hips and waist, and contracting back in. And this time, as you push out, you also add in a little turn. It doesn't matter which way you turn first. Notice again sensations around your hips and lower back. You don't want to cause a strain, a tightening, remember. Back to the beginning. Finishing with the sideways push facing forwards. And this time, as you do, extending one foot, just scooping the seam, looking at the sky. This knee still a little bit bent. And then changing with your weight back, loose fist with each hand, grasping the tiger's ears. So your back lengthens diagonally upwards, almost as though you're kind of trying to push your head forwards and up. One more round. Change over, same two movements with the other foot forwards. Still aware of that contact with the ground beneath your heel. Scooping the sea and looking at the sky. One more time. Change into grasping the tiger's ears. One more round. This time, bring your front foot back so the feet are parallel again. The weight goes forwards and you turn towards your left, or the weight in your left leg. Come back on a diagonal line into your hip on the right side of the body. Move across into your left hip. Feel the change, the slight change in the weight distribution. Forwards into your right leg now, and then back. This is the weight pattern for the seated version of Park the Wild Horse's Mane. So this time we're going to bring our arms into the movement, hands here in front of you, go over into your right hip, turn the right hand palm down, sink into your right hip and release the movement. Coming back, once again, sinking into your right hip and then transfer into your left. Left hip forwards to your right foot. Feel that little bit of compression there. Back into your hip and across. Do one more round of this. So one on each side, one to each leg. Good. So now, rubbing your hands together. Once again, tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. The other side. Upper part of your chest. Belly. Pushing down through the balls of your feet, pushing your knees up, doing the movements with your calf muscles, your thigh muscles. and then around in a circle, feeling the movement in your hip joint. Back the other way. Good. And then standing. Use the chair for support, just to see how that feels. I'm going to move mine out the way so I can move around a bit more. But as always, I do like to sometimes support myself while I'm trying to work out a movement. Feet hip width apart. Toes pointing forwards. Rocking your weight forwards and backwards. And again, just trying to feel those slight changes. That feeling of a denser feeling, a compressed feeling, almost like water flowing forwards, kind of pulling you forwards, but then going back into your hips, into your back, and then forwards again. Feeling the point at which that fluid feeling, rather than going forwards and backwards, actually goes straight down. But also feeling how your body prevents you going too far. If you're going forward, I could just stumble forwards. But remember that your body will have natural mechanisms to stop that happening. And two of the common ones, one is a habit that we want to try and lose, would be to lean back and kind of pull ourselves back. But the other feels like a kind of sitting back to the hips. It's much more subtle than that. This is the one that we want to try and build. And likewise, when we go back, what stops this movement? We know we don't want to do that. You may do it occasionally while you're trying the exercise, but notice that at a certain point, it's almost like your body's slowing you down. A bit like if you drive or cycle, you go along, and as you approach a corner, you just naturally put your foot on the brake or squeeze the brake levers. You know there's a corner coming up. You're getting ready to slow down, to maneuver in whatever way you need to do so. So we're constantly sort of monitoring our environment subconsciously. We feel that, and it's almost like the body itself wants you to slow down. It doesn't want you to do this. Again, there's different ways it may happen. It may stiffen up. We don't want that to happen. It should be in this area of the pelvis, hips, that kind of area. And then next time you feel yourself arriving at that point where everything seems to flow down, let your hips follow that movement down, pushing up. Sinking down. As you reach the bottom, make the change into the wild goose. And then parting the clouds. Notice any urge to sort of shortcut the movement. Don't race to make the change. So what we don't want to do is to be doing this and thinking, oh, it's the wild goose next. We finish the movement, then we change to the wild goose. We finish the wild goose, then we change to parting the clouds. One more round. Good. 1 foot forwards. Just begin to transfer your weight. Thinking about the different elements of this. One thing we can easily focus on, I think, is that oh, here there's a push. We push ourselves forwards and backwards. And then we feel that the push is not the start of it. Actually, what comes before the push is the sinking down, that compression, again, like sitting on a ball, and it will eventually push you back. You can feel that compression from our waist down to our foot. And see if you can remember that feeling of just gently pushing the foot into the ground just after you step. So I go into my back foot, front foot, it's like it's resting on sand. I just imagine that bit of pressure. And now what I find is with that additional thing, we're taking time just to establish that connection to the ground. When the expansion comes, when the push comes to move me from one foot to another, I'm more likely, I'm kind of automatically go in that direction. Without that, I've got to keep thinking, oh, well, I need to go this way, I need to go this way. But actually, it's like, oh, there's a good place to go. There's a good place to go. So again, these very subtle details that I'm talking about that come to the surface when we pay attention, becoming more useful. The weight transfer is more precise, more useful. Raising toes and heel. Put the toes down, press in, move the weight. Or let the weight move. Heel rises, goes down, a little bit of pressure. Almost, sometimes it feels almost as though just the act of applying that pressure draws you forwards. These are all different aspects of the same movement. None of them are complete in themselves. So again, we don't want to get caught up in this, that, or the other. Ultimately, we may focus on something just to build it, but in the end, it's going to be the experience of the movement that's important. And then, of course, we can begin to take the step. Now try that with your other foot forwards. Raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. And then step through. and back the other way. So focusing on the detail, like for instance, that little bit of a push in before you transfer the weight is both good because it helps to quieten your mind to bring you into this moment, not the next moment. And also with the very practical aspect that if you practice this, you won't be doing this walking down the road in this way, but your contact with the ground will be better. It takes a while to build that up, but in my experience, it will build. Right foot forwards. Fisherman cast a net. Where do you feel the filling and the emptying, the compression and the release? Where are the directions of the movement? A lot of this would have just ingrained itself into your movement. And we just want to observe it. Changing next time to pushing away. And then the figure of 8, coming back, hands down to your hip, to an expansion through your left side and forwards, expanding through your right side. Left foot, rear foot, beginning to sink into the ground. Good. The other side. Start with fisherman cast a net. And then pushing away. And turning into the figure of 8, infinity movement. Good. And then once again with the step in. Going back. And bring your feet parallel. Okay. Back to your chair. Once again, feet down, supported by your hips and your feet. Sit back if you need to. Feel the rhythm of your breathing. Let your hands drop down to their sides. And then, embrace tiger, return to the mountain. One more round. And rest. And just open your eyes. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. So, session in the moment.